Hi everyone, we're going to take a look at Chapter 2 in Hachiko Waits. Remember, while we're reading, if you come to a word that you're not sure what it means, make sure you write it down on your vocabulary sheet. Your vocabulary sheet can be in the paper I gave you, or it can just be in your journal, whichever one you want. Okay? And then think about what your journal question is and how it ties to this. Okay, so Chapter 2, right here. Let's get started. Shibuya was filled with tiled roof houses, bordered by a river and surrounded by large fields. The professor and Hachi rounded a corner and made their way down a residential street lined with all kikai trees, their branches covered with clusters of small yellow blossoms. As they walked along, the road grew wider, and a tall Shinto shrine with red wooden gates and a green roof came into view. Many people nodded good morning to the professor as he passed, and they admired Hachi, who pranced along beside his master, his pointed ears pitched forward, his curled tail held high. As the professor and Hachi neared the train station, the streets grew busier with people rushing along on foot and bicycle. Merchants in dark blue happy jackets scurried by, pulling large two-wheeled wooden carts stacked high with boxes. "Hachi, sit," the professor said as they stopped at a corner and waited for a green trolley to pass. Then they crossed the street to the stairway leading up to the train station. Hachi lifted his nose and sniffed the air around the food stalls near the steps to the station. Each stall was decorated with brightly colored papers, lanterns, and each sold different things to eat: noodles, tofu, egg, and fish boiled in broth and yakitori. "The vendors do not open until later in the day," the professor told Hachi, "and you have already had your breakfast, little friend. Come." He hurried up the steps to the train station, and Hachi hurried beside him. "Good morning, Professor Uno." The professor turned around and saw the station master, dressed in his crisp black uniform, white gloves and red-brimmed hat, bowing in respect. "Good morning, Mr. Yoshikawa. Yoshikawa. What a fine-looking dog you have there," the station master said. Hachi sat down and puffed out his chest proudly, as though he understood Mr. Yokishiwa's compliment. "I do not know what to do with him," said the professor, reaching down to rest his hand on the back of Hachi's head. "He followed me here, and I was afraid I would miss my train if I took him back home." "I will watch him for you," Mr. Yoshikawa said, with another bow. "I would be happy to do you the favor." "I could not ask you to do such a thing," said the professor. But you did not ask," the station master pointed out. "I offered. I will keep him in my office." "It is too much trouble." "It is no trouble at all," Mr. Yokishiwa insisted. "On the contrary, it would be an honor for me to do such a small thing for a man of your position." The professor nodded as he thought over the station master's offer. "Arigato, Mr. Yoshikawa," he said, bowing in thanks. "That is very kind of you. I will return at 3 o'clock. "We will be waiting for you," said Mr. Yoshikawa, bowing as well. "What is your dog's name?" "His name is Hachi." "Hachi? Why did you name him 8? 8 is my lucky number, because the kanji for 8 is shaped like a fan held upside down, and it is wider at the bottom than at the top," the professor explained, using his fingers to draw the shape of the Japanese character in the air. "That means the future is wide open, and Hachi is the 8th dog I have owned, so he is sure to be lucky. He is smarter than any other dog I have trained. Already I have taught him to sit, to lie down, to come, and to heel. The only thing I cannot teach him is to bark." "Perhaps it is better that he does not bark," remarked the station master. "Some dogs cannot be taught to stop barking." "That is true," said the professor. "But Akitas do not misbehave like that. They do not bark unless they think something is wrong. But I would like to teach him, just to hear the sound of his voice." He looked down at his puppy, but Hachi remained silent. "Ah, well," Professor Uno said. "I am sure Hachi will speak to me when he has something important to say. Thank you again for offering to watch him." The professor bowed to the station master. He will listen to you. He is usually, he looked down at the puppy once more, a very good dog. The professor showed the ticket taker his train pass and walked with Hachi and the station master onto a platform that bordered the train tracks and was sheltered by a red roof. The platform was crowded with commuters and shoppers. Many of the men wore business suits and leather shoes as the professor did, but some of the men, and most of the women, wore kimonos with wooden geta shoe clogs or straw zori sandals on their feet. While the station master patrolled the platform, Professor Uno stood beside a woman in a green cotton kimono, patterned with butterflies and fastened at her waist with an obi, the color of pale jade. Her belongings were all tied up in a green cloth furoshiki. She balanced the tidy bundle on her right palm. With her other hand, she smoothed her small son's sailor suit. When at last the woman was satisfied with the boy's school uniform, she brushed some wisps of hair away from his forehead with her fingertips. "Look, Oka-san," the boy broke from his mother's fussing and pointed. "A dog is waiting for the train." He held his hand out toward Hachi, but his mother pulled him back. "Yasuo, be careful. He might bite." "He will not hurt you." The professor knelt down between the boy and Hachi. "He is very gentle." "What is his name?" asked the boy. "His name is Hachi," answered the professor as he stood up. "And I am Aizbera Uno." "I am Mrs. Takashi," said Yasuo's mother, bowing her head, "and this is Yasuo, my son." Yasuo is very curious. As if to prove his mother's point, Yasuo bowed and immediately posed another question. "What kind of dog is Hachi?" he asked the professor. "Yasuo," Mrs. Takashi said, "do not be such a bother." "It is no bother," said the professor. "I am happy to answer your question. Hachi is a very special dog called an Akita-ken," he said proudly, and then, being as a professor, he could not stop himself from giving Yasuo and his mother a short lesson about the breed. That's what teachers do. Akitas are known for their intelligence, loyalty, and extreme devotion. Many years ago, when Akitas were first bred in the northern mountains of Honshu, only members of the imperial family were permitted to own them. The breed is more than 300 years old. "How old is Hachi?" Yasuo asked. "Oh, he's just a puppy. He is only 6 months old." "I am much older than that," Yasuo boasted. He opened his hand and spread his fingers wide and counted. "Ichi," he pulled his thumb into his palm. "Ni," he folded down his index finger. "San, shi, go." Yasuo bent in the rest of his fingers and held up his closed fist with pride. "I am 5 years old," he said. "Almost 6, and today is my first day of school." "I'm going to school too," said the professor. Yasuo looked at him in surprise. "I thought grown-ups went to work," he said. "I work at a school," said the professor explained. "I am a teacher in the agricultural department of Tokyo Imperial University." That's a college. "When you are older, maybe you will be in my class." "I would like that," said Yasuo. At exactly 9 o'clock, the train appeared around the bend of the tracks, squealed into the station on squeaky brakes, and came to a halt. As the commuters rushed onto the train, the station filled with the noise of dozens of pairs of wooden geta clogs clacking against the platform. The professor stood still while everyone else hurried past him onto the train. "Hachi, sit," he said. Hachi sat, and Professor Uno bent down and looked into his dark brown eyes. "What a good dog you are," the professor said once the station had quieted. "What a fine dog you are," he repeated softly. "Hachi, you are the best dog in all of Japan." He stroked Hachi's head, kissed the tip of his nose, and straightened up. "I will return at 3 o'clock." The professor stepped inside the train just before it pulled away and waved to Hachi. "Farewell, little friend." Hachi stayed right where he was on the platform, craning his neck to watch the departing train that held his master. When he could no longer see it, He sat a few minutes more, staring at the empty tracks. Mr. Yoshikawa, I said it right before, Yoshikawa came up behind him and scratched his ears. "You are going to spend the day with me, Hachi," he said. "Come." Mr. Yoshikawa took a few steps back towards the office, but Hachi remained where he was, staring off in the direction the professor's train had gone. Then he stood up, turned, and trotted toward the exit of the station. "Hachi!" Mr. Yoshikawa called, clapping his white gloves sharply. "Come back!" Hachi ignored him and continued on his way. "Hachi!" the station master cried. He hurried after the dog, but when Hachi saw he was being chased, he dashed through the station, down the steps, and out onto the street. Mr. Yoshikawa followed the dog down the stairs and tried to catch him, but he could not leave his post at the train station. In dismay, he watched as the tip of Hachi's tail disappeared around the corner. What was he going to tell the professor when he returned on the 3 o'clock train? So, we'll have to see what happens. That will be in Chapter 3, which we will be reading tomorrow. Okay? Thanks for reading with me, guys. Bye-bye.